so much of what I've learned from my body was that I've never felt safe within it.
Right.
And I've never kind of trusted myself enough to listen or to do the things that I'd internally wanted to do. I've just externally heard everybody talking and telling me what to do. But that's not necessarily only from, family, caregivers, friends, teachers. A lot of it's just society.
Yep.
And I feel like what I was trying to do was make myself feel safe in a very unsafe environment. Not necessarily, like I said, my home, because I was in college when I began the eating disorder. And I was ripped away from my safety. Like I was very close knit to my family. And I didn't know who I was outside of that.
Yeah. An identity thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And food provided something for me that no one else could, because no one was going to, food wasn't going to lash out. It wasn't going to, stress me out or anything. But I felt so much shame and guilt for what I did. It was like that inner critic coming up as soon as I would binge eat, that I would need to purge to have that release to feel okay about it. And that honestly really did completely ruin the relationship that I had with food, unfortunately. And to this day, I feel I am obviously much, much better. I have recovered myself from this eating disorder. It's been about 7 or 8 years now. But there is a much different, I would say, relationship that I have with food, but I have to be conscious of it, because as soon as I'm unconscious of it, I can hear the thoughts of, oh, this food is bad, or this food is going to make me fat, or, oh, this has too much sugar, or this is too much carbs. And I'm trying to almost quantify it in a way to justify it not feeling good to eat it. It's returning me to an emotional state that I was used to when I had the eating disorder. And that's the intelligence of our brains and the neurons connections. It's just because I did it for so long, for 12 years, they're hardwired. And I'm trying to be as gentle with myself as I can, still rewiring these patterns that I can tell are pretty much gone, but every once in a while they'll fire. And I'll need to consciously make sure that what I have in front of me, I'm grateful for, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed that I can eat. And these vegetables are nourishing me. This food is nourishing me. This meat, these, this yogurt, this nuts, this beans, whatever it may be, these eggs are coming from this world that I'm a part of. Like, how could this be bad for me? It's a part of me. I'm a part of it. We're all connected in that way. But it's been an interesting journey.
Have you heard of the 6 human needs?
Yes.
All right. So for those that haven't,
yes, please. Yes, please.
You've got
explain.
you've got certainty, significance, variety or uncertainty, love and or connection, growth and contribution. So growth and contribution are the spiritual, esoteric human needs. So the other 4 are our kind of like our primal human needs. And this all comes from Tony Robbins's kind of experience and what he's kind of seen with people. And obviously what you're running through there is, as you say, like this controlling nature would be the certainty. You were in a uncertain environment, unfamiliar environment, an environment which made you feel, I guess, out of control. And you were utilizing the thing that you knew how to use to control how you felt, because obviously food releases dopamine and all these other types of neurotransmitters to make you feel good, because otherwise you wouldn't eat it. And you're utilizing that to your benefit to make you feel certain that where you are is okay and makes you feel safe. So that's a natural thing that we all do. This is why you'll find now, since everything that's happened with COVID and everything else, where there was so much uncertainty, everybody fell into almost OCD-like behavior so that they could control their initial environment, because that was the only thing they felt like they had control over. So that's just another version of that. And it also meant that for you, that food was significant. So you were hitting two human needs with one thing. The food was making you feel certain and in control, but it was also significant to you, the food that you were choosing to eat or binge on, right? And then I guess at the same time, you were getting that uncertainty, that variety because of the environment that you were in. And I guess maybe there was a reason that you were doing it because you were feeling less connection with love or less connection in general. So all of that was running through those four human needs if you break it down enough. And so it just sounds like you were just trying to fulfill those things. It wasn't something that you were consciously choosing to do. It was just a safety mechanism to make sure that you were okay. So that just makes perfect sense to me that it went that way for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you described it really well. It's hard to put into words an experience like that and what the emotions felt like. Yeah, it was completely a way to make me feel better in a very uncomfortable situation. I'm curious, with all of your coaching and speaking to numerous, men and women, because when you came on the show before talking about autoimmune diseases and stuff, so much of that is tied to food because
100%.
it's what we put into our body and then it's being digested in our stomach, which is just as intelligent as our brain.
Yep.
I'm curious if you have made any either connections or just witnessed people talk about food in any certain ways and how their relationship with it is. Because when I started, and just for example, so when I started the nutrition coaching for the company, I'd always be really curious how people ate and what they thought was healthy and sustaining nutrition in their body. And most people have not the best lens of food because of the marketing industries. Most people are eating, pancakes, donuts, cereal for breakfast. They're having fast food for lunch. They don't have time, and then dinner at home. Maybe that's a home cooked meal or something. But always typically followed with dessert and alcohol and all of these things. And not that I'm saying that's bad. I think it's just we as, I guess, coaches or perhaps, leaders in this field need to just bring more awareness to how powerful food is in a way to heal ourselves.
Yep.
And I'm the first person to raise my hand. I had no idea that food could be medicine to my body because I abused it like a drug. And I didn't know that. And I obviously commend Dan for at least opening my eyes and planting many different seeds in my head. So that's why I'm sure that you probably do it unconsciously. But one of the biggest things that people came to us for, they wanted to lose weight, to look a certain way. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I, again, will raise my hand. I've always wanted to look a certain way, but I wanted to look a certain way, exactly like you said, Mark. I didn't love myself.
There you go.
I had absolutely the lowest self-esteem. I had low self-worth, which I'm still working on to this day. But most people, I feel like you can uncover a lot of deeper rooted issues when you begin to hear people talk about their relationship to food. Not only that, their relationship to anything, perhaps their self-care routine, their workout routine. Oh, I don't have time for this. I can't do that. I can't do this. So it can kind of come full circle holistically.
Yep.
And I'm curious, how you hear people talk about themselves, maybe in any capacity, because I'm still learning the language of love for myself. It's gotten much better, but I'm still learning.
So I'll speak from my own personal experience first, because that would be the one that's going to be the easiest for me to describe. So before the autoimmune, I had a pretty decent relationship with food, but it was almost, what's that word? Is it orthorexic? Yeah, orthorexic, when you've got that, you're too addicted to the healthiness of food. It's too restrictive in what you do. That's where I came from. So everything was and I didn't weigh everything meticulously, but I'd weighed everything so much I could look at an amount of rice or a steak, and I'd know within a couple of grams how much that was. That was a big wake up for me because like I shouldn't really care that much at all. It should be more, I think it should be more intuitive. Like listen to what the body's telling you within a reason. Like your body's never going to tell you to eat a bag of donuts. I'm sorry, but it's not. But within reason, like you need to have that intuitive approach. So I was very orthorexic in my behavior. Like I wouldn't eat certain things. I wouldn't have certain things at certain times of the day.
Mhm.
I'd have to make sure everything was in certain sizes and proportions and equally spread out and all that type of stuff. And when the autoimmune happened and every food became a trigger where I couldn't have it, there was
Mhm.
no choice anymore. I was literally down to bone broth and maybe like a potato soup, which was okay because again, it just resembled broth. It just had a little bit of potato in there, like a sweet potato. So there was a little bit of sustenance. It made me realize how restrictive I had been. And it also then made me realize how restrictive this currently was at that time, where I thought I was being restrictive before. When you've got no choice at all,
Mhm.
and it's not from a choice, it makes you stop and think, wow, like all those times I said no to going out with my mates or having a pizza, or going to a friend's party and having a bit of that cake. All of those times I said no was just waste times where I could be creating memories with people. And ideally, is it for me personally, is it going to create an issue? No. Now,
Mhm.
if this was a client who was overweight and needs to lose weight for health reasons, this would be a different conversation because I would say to them, okay, I don't think that would be a good option because it would probably cause a cascade of I've had one slice, so I may as well just have the whole cake kind of scenario. So coming out of that and slowly having to reintroduce foods back in very, very slowly. And this is what I have to do, obviously, with a lot of my clients, where we have to be not just slow, but like uber slow. So
Mhm.
there's no chance of the body rejecting anything. It gives you a whole new perspective on your relationship with food. And so now, where obviously I'm okay and I'm healed and I can eat anything that I want to, I'm still very conscious of the things that I have. Like I
Mhm.
won't sit and eat processed foods just because I know they don't do me any good. They don't do anybody any good for many, many reasons. But if, as an example, like I went out and I met up with a business partner in London, really good friend of mine. He's in another country, so I don't see him. It's the first time I've met him like in person in London. And when I was there, he offered me some food that he'd brought over. And I would have before said no. But I was like, yeah, I'll have some. Why not? I'm with you. It'd be like sharing a beer, I guess, or having a beer together. Neither one of us drinks. So it's that same kind of thing. You're building that relationship with somebody and you're utilizing food as that means to do that. And what that does is it takes you way back to when we would have been in that tribal environment where we would have had a community of people and we would have told stories and connected over food. That's what it
Mhm.
would have been used for. And when you're so restrictive and when you're so conscious of what you're eating, you end up becoming that outlier in a bad way. And so all that that has done for me now when I'm coaching other people is I'm like, I don't like the terms good or bad food.
Mhm.
I think better or worse is a more appropriate term because yes, okay, there are bad foods, but in context, there are no bad foods. Not I'm talking about real foods here,
Sure. Yes.
not like Franken foods. So there are no bad foods. So people demonize certain foods. There are no bad foods. There are just better or worse choices based on you, the individual. That's it. So for somebody who's a celiac, a cake is a worse choice.
Yeah.
Simple, right? Where for somebody that's not a celiac, that's a good choice. So enjoy. So that's a better choice. And what I ask my clients to do is take that kind of that Pareto principle of 80-20 and
Mhm.
say to them, right, 80% of your food for the day needs to be, or for the week or for the month, whoever it is that I'm working with and what they need. 80% of your food is going to be better, 20% is going to be worse. And that way, then you're taking that psychological aspect of, oh, I can't have. Well, yes, you can. we're just going to be doing it in a window, which is going to give you the opportunity to celebrate or go out or whatever the case may be, sit with your kids and have, I don't know, a bit of jelly, whatever. Like, it just gives you that flexibility, because as much as we need to be healthy, we also need to remember this is life and we need to live. And if you're not enjoying it, or you're having to kind of remove yourself from the situation because you can't trust yourself or what have you, then we need to work on these things so that you can get to that position where you can. So I've just noticed that with clients, the observation I've made is everybody has to some degree, bad relationship with food, not from choice, but from confusion.
Yes.
That's the problem, because you've got governmental bodies and officials and scientists and dietitians and nutritionists all disagreeing about what's the right thing to do. And then you've got Instagram influencers who, and I mean this in no disrespect to anybody, but just because they've got like 250,000 followers, they'll go on there and say, oh, you should eat bananas all day, every day. And all of a sudden everybody's eating bananas just because that person said it. And you're like, well, that's not true either. And unfortunately, people haven't got the space or the time to fact check these things. And so I think a lot of the time they choose convenience over what's better because of that confusion. And there just needs to be a little bit of a peg in the ground as to what really needs to happen. Whether you want to eat meat or not, that's a moral standing. That's nobody's choice for you. But whichever way you choose to go, whatever diet or nutritional approach you choose to have, it should be based on your own decisions, not somebody else saying to you that this is the best thing for you. It should be the case of what is good for me? What do I like to eat? What will make this easy for me to do? So if somebody wants to go keto, great, do it. Cool, go ahead. If you want to go carnivore, cool, go ahead. Do these things, because only by trying will you realize what does and doesn't work. And then once you realize what does or doesn't work for you, you will make adaptations and you will change. And it will then morph into the thing that does work for you. And then you'll be in a good place. And I think that's obviously what's happened with you, my darling. Like, you've morphed and changed and grown and failed and learned and had somebody to help you along that way, who's obviously got your best interests in mind and has given you, as you say, some seeds that were planted to give you some alternative pathways to think about. And we're now here, and you're in a much, much, much better position. You are working your way, or have worked your way through it to the point now where you can feel comfortable sharing this story so that other people that may be in the position that you were can relate to this and go, okay, so I will be able to get through this. It's not me being crazy person. There is a genuine reason. Okay, I can work my way through it and I can find my way out. And that's ultimately what we're here for, is to give people that hope and that ability to see that there is a pathway out. It might be covered in vines and jungle because you've actually got to tread the path that's not actually done for you. But ultimately, when you get to the other side, you're going to be in a much, much better position for it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm actually very glad that you kind of brought up your story. So thank you for sharing that, because could not agree more that I was the exact same. Like I had mentioned, the eating disorder was so controlled. Like, it was something that I knew. When I stopped that and thought I had healed myself, and and I do want to say that I at least healed myself, that I wasn't bulimic anymore.
Yeah.
But what I did was just move that control to a very specific way of eating, exactly like you did. I wasn't necessarily, we weren't measuring grams, but exactly, I was very strict with intermittent fasting, like the same breakfast, simply black coffee. I think I started fasting 4 days a week. And it's like, so I still knew that something psychologically hadn't healed itself. So I just moved from one eating disorder just to disordered eating, but I was able to control it.
I like that. That's very good.
I was able to control it, but then I realized, like, my hair was falling out. It was so thin, it wasn't growing. I was so lethargic and I didn't have any energy. And it just, so then I began realizing, okay, I'm not Dan. Like I can't, my hormones are different. Like my cells are different. Like I can't fast as much as he does. And exactly like you were saying, I too, and I think both of us did, we would not go out to dinner with friends. We would miss birthday parties and those things because food for me was a big trigger. And it was, if I eat one piece of cake, it lights out, everybody move over. I'm eating the whole thing. I'm so little, but I can eat a whole cake, let me tell you. But the reason why I bring this up in full circle, like I've done the keto, we've done carnivore, all of these things are very controllable.
Yep.
And it lends to the just underlying control of what an eating disorder does. And again, that's just one facet. Dan's very controlled and disciplined with his workouts. As long as you do have a healthy relationship with it, though, then it's not going to be something where you need to find something else in your life to control. But all of these diets and the fads, as you would, did teach me something.
Okay.
And then I did, and that was that I still wasn't trusting myself.
Yep.
So I was listening to, as you said, influencers, try this supplement, do this, do that. Yes, the keto diet's going to work.
Yep.
Yes, it does. Let me tell you, I've never been so thin in my life. But what the keto diet doesn't tell you is it's not great for recovering people who have an eating disorder. Do you know what I mean?
Nope.
As soon as I started introducing carbs back, I bloated and probably gained more than I even started with.
Yep.
So that's what I want people to know and understand. Please, I could not agree, Mark. You have to try these things if you feel you're being called to. It is that intuition, like, all right, I'm going to try this. But know that if it goes awry afterwards, it's a beautiful opportunity for you to just say, I learned through this. And all right, that taught me so much about myself and the relationship that I either do have or need to maybe perhaps work on. And it helped build my intuition more and that inner dialogue with myself to hear what I needed to eat, to nourish my body instead of using it as a way to control it in the sense of I have to be lean, I have to be more toned, I have to lose, this amount of weight. All three of us sitting here have much different relationships with food, even though we're in this same kind of holistic lifestyle and know that food is medicine, but all of our relationship is different. And that's what I want to make sure people know, because still people ask us all the time, what should I eat?
Yeah.
Or,
what's the best diet?
Yeah. And Elise and Dan won't eat that. And that breaks my heart when I hear that. I'm not sure if you have that, but friends, family members, Elise and Dan would never eat that. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've portrayed myself in this way. Like, no, I promise I will eat that chocolate. Trust me.
I will.
Yes. And I will enjoy it. Like I'll thoroughly enjoy it now.
Yeah. I think on that note, sorry to interrupt you, I think on that,
please.
It's a case of we will eat something like that. It just might not be eaten in the same way that somebody else would eat it. So as an example, I got invited to do a talk at a primary school today. So for kids aged 8 to 11 about the importance of health, sports, physical education, that type of stuff.
Cool.
Which was amazing, absolutely amazing. Like the kids were just silent. They listened. They like literally half the room put their hands up to ask questions, which was fantastic. But at the end, they said, oh, to say thank you for coming, here's a bar of chocolate. And I was like, oh, just give it to the kids. They're like, oh, no, we can't give it to the kids. And I was like, okay. Well, I was going to say I won't eat it. But I was like, okay, I'll take it. It's a gift. I don't want to be rude. So that bar of chocolate is going to sit in my fridge probably for quite some time until I fancy having a bit of that bar of chocolate. Now, that's how I have a relationship with it. Somebody else who would say, oh, Mark doesn't eat that chocolate, they would probably eat it straight away. They probably would be eating it in the car on the way home. Because, and this was something that I was going to add in. So when you are of a certain body type where you're generally quite lean and you're looking after your health, your relationship with food is about control. But when and this again is just my anecdotal experience with it, when you're overweight or obese, depending on the category, your relationship with food isn't about control because there is no control. It's about feelings. not control. That's very OCD, anxiety driven. I must be in control of this environment. This is very much, I don't like how I feel. I don't like how I think other people think about me. So that makes me feel this certain way. So to make me feel something other than this sadness, I'm going to eat this. And then once you finish eating it, you still feel bad about it because you've now eaten something that you know you shouldn't have. So that's all about feelings. This is all about control, both very, very different for different type sets of people. And I just wanted to add that in there as a little kind of caveat to that.
I like that. That's something along the lines of what, like Elise had mentioned before, food is medicine.
Yes.
And I think there's something really, really interesting in that, because people, I think, say it all the time, but don't ever really think about what it actually means.
No.
It's like when we eat food, that food gets broken down in our gut, and that triggers the release of different hormones and, neurotransmitters and different signals. And our body's responding in the same way that, like, we take, like, what we think of as medicine, like a pharmaceutical pill, is also going into our body to trigger the response and creation of certain proteins.
Yes.
So our food is doing the same thing. So the experience of eating is creating different chemicals within our body that are creating a response that becomes our physical body.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily like the food that we're eating become like you are what you eat.
Yeah.
In a sense, is true. In a sense, it's not at all, because that's getting just digested by gut bacteria, processed and eliminated, and what we become is the response to that food.
Yes.
But also what gets tied into that is the rest of the experience of eating. So you could be eating the perfect diet, and I'm saying that with like quotes for anyone who's listening, because there's no perfect diet, but you could be doing everything right, but if you're doing it like in your kitchen alone and sad and wishing it was something else, the proteins that you're going to end up making are going to be sad, and they're going to be attached to this feeling of a lack of worth and not being good enough.
Yes.
Where also the example you used before, which I wanted to bring this up, is perfect. Where like you meet up with your business partner, you have this great experience, and you're eating foods that aren't perfect. Same quote fingers.
Yeah.
The food, the choices, they weren't the best choices maybe, but it's in this like beautiful environment where you're bonding and you're sharing, and that's going to create different reactions in your genes, different proteins, and a completely different experience. So there's more that goes into it than like the food. It's the whole experience of eating.
Yes, definitely.
And that's why like people get really, really confused. And part of that is that there's these corporations that are just straight up lying to us, and they're making foods that aren't real foods. Like you mentioned Frankenfoods before. But a part of the confusion too is all these influencers are telling us what worked for them. Because it did. And they got great results with this certain diet, and they're excited and want to share it. But if you're not in the same brain state and the same lifestyle and the same everything else as them, you're not going to have those same results. So it's like, it's not necessarily complicated, but it's very complex. And there's a lot that goes into it. And I think we overlook a lot because we try to simplify everything and be like, this food is good, this food is bad. Or like we said, but people ask like, what's the best food? Why should I eat this or this? And it's not that. It's like a way bigger picture discussion, I think.
Oh, mate, 100%. And I love the way that you've summed that up, because I can't remember who was talking about this. They were saying like they had like I think it was like a chef, and he cooked food as if he hated it, and then he cooked food as if he loved it.
Yes.
He had other people eat it, and they hated the food that he basically cooked with hatred, and they loved the food that he cooked with love. It's that exact same thing, because at the end of the day, it's all energy, frequency, vibrations, right? So if there's a lot of, I can't remember the name of the Chinese guy that did this with water, where he sent the water like love.
I know. We watch him on Gaia all the time. I know who you're talking about though. Yeah, he like
what's it called? Cymatics, right? Yeah, he puts love into it and it forms these beautiful shapes. And then when he puts hate into it, it forms all this disjointed stuff, right? That's it. That's why it's so important to have the right environment, the right mindset, the right energy going into what you're doing with the food, and also hopefully being able to eat it in a happy state. This is why I say, like, one of the things I say to my clients I have this Area 51 rule when it comes to work and food. You must not categorically must not eat where you work, and you must not categorically work where you eat. There has to be this Area 51 rule of a no-go area. You can only eat in a place where you feel abundant and you feel safe and you feel love. And you would work in a very similar place, but there's now stress mixed with that abundance and that drive and that passion. I don't want that where I eat my food. I want chilled and relaxed, right? So it's about how we set that intention. And then there's the other side of it. I was listening to Thich Nhat Hanh talk about this before he passed, where he said that he says 3 prayers before, or 3 things he's grateful for before he eats. So he will say like, I appreciate this food, I love this food, and I love this day, or whatever the case may be, or I appreciate the animal or the vegetable or the fruit that gave up its existence to be part of me. He would appreciate it before he eats it. So that way then he is blessing that food with his own positive energy, so that when he eats it, as you say, it's going into the body in this happy state. I was doing those quotes as well, people, if you those aren't watching. So like it's going into the body in that happy state, and it's creating that happy response in the body. So I think that's a great thing to bring up, because it's something that's not spoken about a lot when it comes to food in general. And the fact that we no longer, well, most people don't eat in a community space anymore, or in a family environment anymore, where there's a big table of people. Everybody's very separate. And I think it would be remiss not to bring this up and say, like, if you do have the opportunity to go to a family dinner, or like group of friends inviting you out, go, because it's a much different experience of sitting down on your table on your own eating food, which is just going to be like a same thing, same day kind of thing.
Yeah, just being happy and being around joy and being grateful, like it goes so far.
Well, I want to pivot here, because I think that this is really important. Not pivot, but I'm because I'm curious, Mark, what your thoughts are on this. You brought up beautifully that you advise your clients not to eat in their workspace where there's stress and stuff. I think what I want to bring to people's attention is everybody is pretty much stressed in this day and age. We've got a lot of stress going on.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are many of us that live in a chronic state of stress, that do not know how to regulate our nervous system. And when we're in that chronic state of stress, food does not digest properly, because your body it thinks it needs to run from a saber-toothed tiger or something, you know? So many people, I feel, would used to come to us saying, like, I can't lose weight. Even at that point, workouts aren't going to be beneficial, because your body's already stressed. You can't possibly just add more stress to it. So let's talk about that too, because I think even before, I really didn't realize how badly I had shot my nervous system into kind of really a chronic, almost frozen state, even beyond the fight or flight, because I was so used to living in stress that my body really wasn't properly digesting food. And I would always feel like almost heartburn here at a certain point, which so many of Dan's clients do. Our family and friends, everybody is popping like Tums or antacids after they eat. And I think that there is just the inability to digest it properly, because your body's natural mechanisms that typically break down food are signaling like, no, we've got to get your body safe enough and out of this stress state. Yeah,
I agree.
Which is also a huge, I know you're about to say something, but stress also is a big part of inflammation.
Yep, definitely. So in that heightened stress response, the body obviously, as you know, releases cortisol. Cortisol is released to reduce stress. That's the reason why it's kind of brought in. In the morning, it's different. It's released to bump us up and wake us up. But it's actually like an anti-stress hormone. That's kind of why it gets released. The more stressed we become, the more cortisol gets released, because the body's trying to bring us back down again. And unfortunately, we're in this cortisol kind of dysregulation, cortisol kind of, what's what I'm looking for here? We've become desensitized to it. So it just keeps going and going and going and going, and it just doesn't bring anything back down again. So yeah, I think eating in this stress state, as you say, when we're stressed, the body is thinking, as you say, we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or by a bear or something. And so it's thinking, run. It's not thinking digest. It's not thinking have sex. It's not thinking play a game, dance around a fire. It's thinking run and run fast and climb a tree. So everything else is going to get shut off. Not all your energy is going to be pushed towards the muscles. Adrenaline is going to spike, and you're going to get this kind of this nervous thing to kind of move. So taking that to a dinner table and expecting your body to be able to digest your food, well, that's just silly. It's just never going to happen. The body's doing what it naturally would do, and it's not getting the right signal. So being able to put yourself into that parasympathetic state before you have food is going to be really helpful. So you can do anything to kind of stimulate the vagal nerve, right? So you can do like something called humming bee practice, where you just hum like a bee would buzz. So you're just going to take it in and hum. That's going to vibrate the neck and the throat, and that's going to help with the vagal nerve tone, and that should start to slow it down. Same as if somebody does an if you chant it's that same that shape of that word, the R, that's from Brahma. So R, it's so deep within the throat, it vibrates through the sternum and goes into the gut. And then the U, that vibrates through the heart and up into the throat. And then the will vibrate the throat and up into the cheek and into the cranium. So that's basically going through your whole endocrine system, and it's going to start to regulate it. That's a very easy thing to do. People are going to think that you're nuts if you're sitting there going omming before you have your food. But there are loads of other things that you can do, like Andrew Huberman's physiological sigh. That's another good way to sit yourself very quickly. It only takes like 3 or 4 breaths to do it, to lower the heart rate. And because you're focusing on the breath, you're taking your mind away from the other things that are stressing you out, and all of a sudden the body will center. Just by doing something as simple as that, or just acknowledging your breath. Let's just sit there, close your eyes, just acknowledge your breath for maybe 3 or 4 breaths, and then start to eat. But here's an extra tip that I always say to my clients: no phone, no laptop. Don't watch anything. If you want to listen to something like a podcast or what have you, that was like having people around you. So that would be like having like a conversation going on, which you would have at a big meal. Fine. But no laptop in front of you, no TV in front of you, no iPhone in front of you, because it's distracting. You won't focus on eating. You'll eat far too quickly because it becomes unconscious. And at the same time, you're going to find that you're not going to regulate yourself properly. You're not going to chew properly. You're not going to be able to masticate properly. Everything's going to be in this rushed state. And you might only get like 5 minutes through the podcast and you're done. Well, it should be way slower than that. You know, we should be taking at least 30 to 40 chews per bite. We're supposed to be putting our fork down so that we masticate properly, because the more we can chew, the less we have to digest, which makes that whole process a lot easier. But the extra thing I'm going to add into that about this upper gastro issue, anybody that suffers from this upper gastrointestinal kind of bloat after they've finished eating, that's actually low stomach acid and not a high stomach acid response. So if you find yourself getting that, I would recommend putting some bitter vegetables into a bowl with a little bit of apple cider vinegar and having that before you eat your food, or just buying some Swedish bitters. Popping some of that into the mouth about 15 minutes before, or some betaine HCl, something like that. Take that with your food. That's going to help the stimulation of bile, and that's going to help with the production of stomach acid, and you'll find your digestion will be better, but only if you do the other things that we have mentioned beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. I tell everybody apple cider vinegar before you eat.
And we do
of Tums,
that.
it's like, you're taking antacids,
but people don't understand because they're like, wait, it's acidic. Why? And I mean, you can probably explain it much better than I can.
You're just perpetuating it by like a little bit of acid you have, and you're numbing it out. It's like, it's the opposite. It's
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Most people don't have high stomach acid. Most people have low stomach acid just from the way that we live. And our liver is a bit overburdened. It's not producing enough bile. The gallbladder doesn't store as much. And so we're now starting having low stomach acid symptoms. Then you're going to take an antacid and it's going to make it even worse. So you're going to have even less, which makes your digestion even worse. So it's just that self-fulfilling prophecy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned too, like chewing. Like I think, I still eat a little too fast. It's something I'm constantly working on. But I've noticed that I feel significantly better when I do slow down and eat more consciously. Paul Chekos says, like, drink your food and chew your water.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was going to say that quote as well, but I had a feeling you'd probably be popping
Yeah,
that
I
quote in
love
at
it.
some
Yeah.
point.
It's like chew enough that you can literally like your food becomes a liquid. And then when you're
Exactly.
drinking water, like move it around your mouth, mix it with your saliva so that you're able to assimilate it better into your system. And I think those
Definitely.
both
I
so
I
much.
love the way that he describes all of that. He's such a great dude.
Yeah.
Well, I think that this is also kind of a really interesting just side note to bring up, because I tend to eat very fast too, or getting much better than both people eating very fast. But the reason why I do that is because I was very ashamed to eat
Yeah.
and really scared to eat in front of people because I was afraid of them judging me. So I would eat as quickly as I could, you know, to clear my plate and feel like, oh, all right, I'm done. At least like that's over with.
Yeah.
And I know like a couple of my family members also eat very fast too. But Dan, when we were having this conversation, he also said that he ate so fast because within his family, like he had two other brothers, his mom and his dad, and his mother would always say, like, you know, if you don't eat quickly, you're not getting seconds. So
Yeah.
Dan would be really quick. But yeah, it's funny now and we can like laugh about it. But I've also been questioned and judged at how quickly I eat and how quickly we eat. You know, people judge what they don't understand, right?
Yes.
So like, yeah, I'm eating really quickly. Most of these people who are saying like, wow, you eat really fast, didn't understand that I had an eating disorder for 12 years, or that, you know, Dan's mother made this one comment that stuck with them. But this is how like our brains are sponges.
Yep.
And I think it's interesting because so much of that physiological aspect to eating is then transferred to the relationship we have with food moving forward and what it is. And it's like instead of respecting what was in front of me, knowing that this is beautiful and nourishing, I was just eating it as quickly as possible for that shame response to be alleviated as quickly as possible. Dan was, I think, was more of survival of the fittest, trying to.
I was always like really, really skinny. Like I was obsessed with gaining weight for so long that I like wanted to eat as much food as possible.
Yeah.
Like the faster you eat, you don't. It's literally like the opposite. People who are trying to lose weight, like if you eat slower, you will eat less. But me, I was always thinking like the faster, the more food I can get in before I get that response that I'm not hungry, the more I can eat, because I need to get so many calories every day. So it was like trained myself for so long to eat really fast.
Yeah. I was exactly the same. Exactly the same. I remember through like all my CrossFit days, I would finish a workout and finish work. I'd come home and I'd have like, I don't know if this was on like a Friday night or something, I'd have like an extra large pizza and I'd have the garlic bread and I'd have like a mini box of like Krispy Kremes. And I knew that I wanted to eat every single part of this. And I would have to eat it all very, very quickly so it would all fit into that window before I realized that I'm overly full. I feel very, very sick. And now I'm just going to lay on my sofa and not move for the next however many hours until I pass out from a food coma. That's, I think that again, probably also comes from more of the, and I don't want to shame the bodybuilding industry, but it probably comes from that too. Because you're always told when you're going to put mass on, if you're a skinny guy and you go into a gym and they're like, you just need to eat food, you need to eat food, eat food, crack your raw eggs and pour some milk in there and then some ice cream and add that and blend it up and peanut butter and drink that and then go and eat a steak and then have your rice. And you're like, and how many meals is that? One. Oh, okay. I need to have more room for another meal, at least another 4. You're like, oh my God. Well, if you want to put weight on, you've got to. And you're like, geez, all right, okay. And that's kind of the era that I grew up in. So I was always, I remember I used to take meals to school with me when I was like 13. I'd make my own meals and I'd have like 4 meals with me at school just so I could eat them in between school, like lessons and stuff to try and put some weight on because I was so skinny. So like you, I had this eat very, 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 very fast mentality. And I think that probably did lead to a little bit of that eating disorder moving forward, like the weighing everything and tracking everything and what have you. And again, that industry brought that out in me, just always tracking, always knowing exactly to the gram how much is going in. And if I went 5 grams over, oh my God, I had 5 grams more peanut butter than what I should have. That's it. Diet's ruined, done. And it's not in all contexts, it's not at all.
It's so funny that you think about it and put it in perspective, like from an evolutionary standpoint, like if you imagine you're like living off the land out in the woods somewhere, like it doesn't make sense that we are built in a way that we have to weigh and measure all these really specific foods. Like, nope, I've had 7 berries. I cannot have another berry today. That doesn't make any sense.
I love that. It's so true. I hadn't thought of it like that before. Just seeing these hunters going around, be like, oh no, we've already got 9 apples. We can't possibly take any more apples with us because we've got the 9. That's exactly how many we need. Yeah, but it's taken us 5 hours to find this. Doesn't matter. We'll starve before we take 10 apples. That's just greedy. We'll all just get fat. This doesn't make any sense. And you got to think, like, if you were in that situation, you were hunting and you managed to get something which was a huge score for your tribe. Yes, you'd want to kind of spread it out over a certain amount of time so that you could feed, but you would have a feast.
Yeah.
Absolute feast. Well, I say they would. We don't know that, but I would. I'd have an absolute feast. There'd be a party for days on whatever that was that we just caught, and everybody would be eating non-stop until you passed out from a meat coma, like that, like sitting there with the meat sweats. Like that would be it, right? And now everything is so controlled and so restricted. But I think when everything used to be like, we go back to our grandparents' generation and maybe their generation, everything was farm to table. So they were part of the process of everything, from maybe hunting it or growing it and picking it or whatever. So they knew the whole process. They knew how valuable it was. They knew what love went into it. They knew how long it took to grow it. They knew how long it might have taken to catch it and kill it, whatever. So they treated it very, very differently to what we do, where because we've now got this convenience where we can basically just get whatever we want whenever we want. Well, it allows us to have that gluttonous approach where it's like, okay, I can eat all of this all right now because I can literally just go to the store and buy even more later. So we don't have that same appreciation, which goes back to what you were saying, my darling, about sitting with the food and acknowledging that it's going to give you energy and it's going to become part of you and the energy is going to be transferred into you and all this. Like, they would have done that where we don't do that anymore. And I think it's that disconnect from our food where most of us don't know what it's like to plant crops and grow them, and plant veg and grow them, and plant fruit and grow them, or to have animals and look after them and have to slaughter them or whatever. Like, most of us don't know that. And that creates that massive void and disconnect from food where we just don't have any relationship with food, I don't think. It's just more of kind of like a numbed out, it's a thing that I must do kind of approach, or it's a thing that gives me joy or pleasure or whatever, you know? Yeah. I mean, anyway, that's just something I was just thinking about on the spot there. I don't know if you guys agree, but I think we just got that disconnect.
I think like that goes back to like connection, like you were saying before, where like that's like one of our basic needs is having a connection. And if you're not getting that in like sort of that like true natural sense that that humans have for generations, then you need to like almost like find the connection in a different way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that what I want to make sure, and I beautifully said, Mark, about the, planting and of crops. Yeah, we know nothing about that. I feel like I have like a little garden, a home garden, and it's like, this is grueling. I can barely keep like my dill alive, never mind, our ancestors on the Italian like countryside and things like that. And yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. So I'm very glad that you brought it up, because kind of wrapping up, I want to make sure that I come across at least not demonizing food the way that I did when I started the show, saying that, I didn't have a healthy relationship to it. And that's my honest, vulnerable truth that I spoke when I said that, but that was a very, very long time ago. And one of the biggest things that I do feel like in this lifetime, I came here to learn through this relationship to food, right? Everything in the universe is relative. It's our relationship to people, to money, to circumstances, to our own thoughts, to technology, to information. Everything is relative, to nature, to material items. Everything can be broken down with our relationship to it. But deeper than our relationship to it is the stories that we tell ourselves about it. So, right, I had this really just convoluted story about food, unfortunately, that I'm sure a lot of it was possibly either inherited or energetically taken on, or like as a child, I witnessed something, not in the best sense. And again, that's just our sponge brains from, 0 to 7, perhaps. But I continued that story for a very, very long time. But now, as I'm getting older and very much more consciously living my life and consciously doing things to empower myself, to discover who I truly am, to tap more into that worth and self-love, I'm beginning to reframe these stories. And so that I can better understand the relationship that I have to food, because I don't look at it the same way that I did, 15, 20 years ago. I am so much more appreciative of, fruits and vegetables that grow from the earth. Any type of animal that I eat that has sacrificed their lives, that is now a part of me energetically. And then I'm secreting that out and giving back to the earth energetically.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting to think about how the stories shape us. Stories shape who we are. And it had shaped me in such a weird way that I've just had to retell a different story. But I want people to know that regardless of your stories, whether it be about, a romantic relationship or a relationship with food, a relationship with business, career, your job, a relationship with money, if it's not at a place that is in alignment with who you believe you are, you do have the ability to change it.
Yes,
and you can't. And I think that's the power of these conversations. You don't have to keep digging that hole of fear and doom and gloom. Like, I promise there is a much better way to live. You just have to be willing to let go of the stories that shaped you. And unfortunately, that is a past version of yourself, which can be really, really, really hard to let go of. And it took me a very long time to do. There is no race in this life, right? Like, I wasn't like, oh, hey, I made it 1 year earlier than I thought to recover from my eating disorder. No, it's just, I recovered myself. And then, like I said, I went through a plethora of diets and controlling things, and that still wasn't working, but at least got me to this point. And I learned a whole lot by doing that.
Yeah. I think that whole experience was you working through the relationship that you had with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. You said yes.
I think that's what we're all doing with every relationship we have, whether it's relationship with food or with clothes or with people or with technology or with cars or with drugs or with drink, whatever it is, it's a mirror of your relationship with yourself. And when something takes over and is almost at that point where you're doing it even though you know that you shouldn't, that's telling you that you love that thing more than you love yourself. And at that moment, that's when the penny should drop. And you should ask yourself that question, okay, but why? What's the underlying reason that I'm doing this? Not the first reason. So like Jim Rohn would always say, like, ask yourself why enough times and you'll get to their answer, right? So I eat this way. Why? Well, because of this. Why? Well, because that happened. But why? Well, I felt like this then. Why? Oh, because she said that. Oh, right? Ask yourself why enough times and you're going to find the answer. So I think with all of these things, it is just like, we've all had very distorted relationships with food. And it's about asking ourselves why. Mine, I know what mine was. Mine was because I wanted to look a certain way so that I could attract what I felt that I didn't have in my life at that time. I lived on my own from a very, very young age. So I didn't have parents around me to guide me or create that safe environment and to make me feel loved unconditionally. Even though I now know I was, back then I didn't. And the only thing that I could do was change my external to make myself seem more attractive and make people want me more, I guess, in that way. And so that's where mine came from. And once I understood that, it changed the dynamic of everything. So everything is just about how we feel about ourselves. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think one of the we were on a podcast yesterday, and a guy was interviewing us, and he asked me a really interesting question, because he said, because most people ask, kind of why did you do this to yourself? And it is unfortunate. I could not agree more. Same thing. Certainly emotional abandonment. I felt very unsafe, and the only thing I could control is the experience of how people looked at me in a certain way. But he asked me why I stopped.
Oh.
And I was like, because I remember the night that I told Dan, because I remember sitting on our couch in LA, and I just looked at him. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm going to kill myself. Like, it's to have an eating disorder for nearly 12 years. You live a double life. It is exhausting to be someone that you're literally lying to literally everybody in your life, because you're hiding this facade. I think I just got to the point where I was like, I want to know who I am without this.
Yeah.
Like, who this has, as much as I was controlling it, it was controlling me.
Yes.
And I didn't know who I was. And I
you don't have a choice anymore.
Exactly. And I just thought, I want to know who I am without this, free of this. Like, what does that feel like? And I honestly think, because I just sent that out to the universe, that it put it out there, the energy. It was almost like I surrendered. Like, it was almost like I'm giving up, but I'm allowing myself to like transform from the inside out. And that's what allowed change to kind of manifest in the world around me.
Yeah, that's amazing. It takes getting to that point where it's almost like a rock bottom, where there isn't any further that you can go for that massive transformation to take place. And you might have found this with some of your more some of the clients that are in slightly more difficult situations. There's somebody just wants to lose weight. That's one thing. But somebody's coming to you where they've got trauma and other stuff coming behind them, like abusive relationships, whatever the case may be. They only come to people like us when they are at that place where the pain of staying the same is more than the pain of the change. And that's when huge transformations can take place, because now they're ready, because there's no other way to go. It's that dog backed into a corner that can only come out. That's the place where you got to on that moment where you're sat on the sofa being like, I can't do this anymore, because this isn't what I want my life to be. I don't want this anymore. And I would like to gift myself who I truly am. And the only way that I can do that is to stop being this, because this isn't who I am. And that's just a beautiful place to be in, because that's when all of a sudden the weight comes off and you're free, and you can now wake up the next day and be like, right, okay, so who am I? Let's find that out. And that's a really, really exciting place.
Yeah, it is. And it's been a journey. I feel, even food aside, I'm still discovering who I am. I'm certainly not the same person I was yesterday, a week ago, never mind a year, 5 years ago. But I like that. This is such a fun time to discover, rediscover, try new things. Like, the world is not static. Change is the only constant. I think that it's wonderful. But like, before we go, as coaches, you guys, is there anything you kind of want to like wrap up in terms of you think would be really helpful for people? I mean, we've talked a lot about there are no good foods, there are no bad foods, right, wrong, higher decisions, lower decisions, worse foods, things like that. But I think it's the way that I used to phrase this when coaching people, kind of like you were saying, it's really getting down to the root of why. Why do you eat a certain way? Why do you want to? But I think more importantly is just become aware of your thoughts when you're about to eat something or write or preparing something, because those thoughts are the stories that you tell yourself. And we do that unconsciously, right? We talked about this last time on the podcast. We have 60, 70, 80,000 thoughts a day, and they're all repetitive. So all we have to do to maybe begin the process is just tune into that and become more aware, like, oh, wait a minute. I'm telling myself, oh, I have to eat this. It's going to make me fat, but I'm going to do it anyways. And then you're eliciting an emotional response that comes with it. then tomorrow comes, it's the same thing. So I think, how do you, I feel like I can't even remember how I would phrase that to clients on how to become more aware of it, other than just listen to those thought patterns, that those voices that are yours in your heads. But also what I have found, a deeper question, are those thoughts actually yours? Especially pertaining to food and body image, are they? That's what I really, that's another deep way to go. Like, some of them were mine for sure, but it's like, oh wait, I don't think so. I think I learned that. I think I heard that for somewhere. I think I saw that on TV. I think I read it somewhere. I think an influencer said this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Dan, do you want to give your insight on that first?
Yeah. I love what you said about just like bringing awareness to your thoughts and paying attention. I would almost like add on to that, just understanding like how incredible just the human body is. Like, we're even more than that. Like, we are this like immense eternal being. But even if we just look at like the human body, it's the most incredible technology that we have any comprehension of. And it can do so much. It can handle anything. Like, all the, like, if you want to look at like your diet, like maybe you haven't been eating right and you haven't been eating in a way that serves you and takes care of you, your body has handled it so well that it's been able to find ways. It's been able to adapt and maybe store some extra body weight, because that was how it kept you alive. Like, everything your body has done has been to keep you alive. And if you can just kind of get on your body's side instead of fighting against it and hating, like, so many people I think want to hate themselves into better health or getting in better shape. If instead you can work with your body and appreciate your body and be grateful for it, and then just like work with it, give it the things that it actually needs and actually wants. It's like the change is going to happen so fast, and it's so exponentially fast.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. And I used to say this to clients when I used to coach clients in the gym. I used to ask them this question before we start working together. I would ask them, why do you want to change your body? Is it because you hate your body, or is it because you love your body? And 9 times out of 10, they say it's because they hate it. And I'm like, right, yeah, we need to change that. We're not here to train hate. We're here to train love. That's what we're here for. Your body will respond if we train love, but it won't respond if you train with hate, because it understands that you're punishing it. And that's not a place where your body's going to respond. So I think that's a beautiful way of kind of reframing the food situation as well. Like, why am I eating this food? Is it because I love myself or because I hate myself? Well, if you are looking at losing weight and you're sat there with a brownie, you're definitely not sitting there because you love yourself. That's something that you need to reflect upon. And that brings me to my answer as to how I help clients bring awareness to what they're doing. And it can be one of 2 ways. So every client has access to me via WhatsApp. That's how I always communicate with them. They can message me, audio note me, whatever they want. And for ones that I need to keep track of, and they need to keep track of themselves, and I need them to bring some awareness to their actions, I'll make them do one of 2 things. They will either keep a written food journal where every single piece of food that they are going to eat, they have to write it. And it's not a food journal where they, like, I've got a journal somewhere here where I write as you guys, we spoke last time on the podcast, like, not that kind of journal. I'm talking about a bit of A4 paper that's kind of blue tacked to the kitchen door or whatever. And every time you're going to take something out, you're going to grab that pen and you're going to write out brownie. Right? You're going to make yourself consciously aware of that choice. Or before you eat it, you have to take a picture of it and you have to send it to me. And you have to tell me, is this better or worse? And at the end of the day, you have to tell me what percentage split that is. Is it 80-20 like we agreed? Or is it 80-20 in the opposite direction? This is just going to bring more conscious awareness to what you are doing. Now, you can't hide anything in a picture. You can obviously not take a picture of it, but even by not taking a picture of it, you are becoming aware that you're not taking a picture of it because you know it's something that you shouldn't be having, and therefore then you won't have it. So it's just, as Anthony DeMello says, the first state of change is awareness. That's all that needs to happen. Bring the awareness to the front. Become conscious of the unconscious. It's the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns, right? Make the unknowns known. And that way, then it is all in front of you and you can make a better decision, because it's not about now, because what you do today determines tomorrow, not today. So we've got to think even further ahead, 10, 20 years time. If you keep doing these same things, nothing's going to change if nothing changes, right? So we have to be aware of these changes. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've done from an awareness perspective with regards to food that's had the biggest amount of impact for people. And it's so simple to do as well.
That's awesome. I love that too. Oh, I feel like that was a really good way to wrap up. Mark, thank you for joining us for the second time.
Thank you again, guys. My pleasure.
Remind us where people can find you, your website and your Instagram. What can we link in the show notes for you?
All right. So Instagram is where I am the most. That's at the Everyday Athlete. And that's EVRY. I've deliberately spelled that wrong just because I like saying it out loud because it's harder for people to find now. I thought I was being like a little bit, kind of different with it, but now it's even harder for people to find me. I do have a website, but it's currently down right now because I'm actually building a health coaching platform where it's basically I'm trying to distill all of my knowledge into one place, and then I'm going to offer it out as like a learning hub for everybody. So that's not currently there at the moment. So everything else is on Instagram. I don't post as regularly as what I should, but I story all the time. So if you like just watching stories, you can come and follow me.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure, guys. No worries.